You're listening to I Have Some Notes, a podcast supported by listeners like you. To contribute, visit patreon.com/I Have Some Notes.
Welcome, everyone, to I Have Some Notes, Side Notes Edition. Today, we are conducting the Intellectual Property Lottery. What is that? Greg will describe, but first, let us introduce ourselves and our guests. I'm your host, Liam Creswick.
I'm Scott C. Bourgeois.
And I'm Greg Beaver.
And for the Intellectual Property Lottery, in broad strokes is going to be pitching ideas for intellectual properties that have yet to be filmed. We invited back our guest. You've heard him on episodes. You've heard him on the last time we pitched crazy ideas for crazy movies. Comedian, podcaster, musician, Robyn Slack is here to join us. Thanks for joining us, Robyn.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to it. It's an exciting premise.
The Intellectual Property Lottery. Greg, can you please describe to us this cockamamie scheme you have brewing for us? Very excited, of course.
Well, what we've done we've collected various IPs from our listeners. That the stipulation was that it can't have been made into a movie just yet. So these might be old TV shows or video games, or they might be just really weird stuff like products you find in the grocery store. I think there's several of those on the list, as I recall. And what we'll be doing is we'll be doing a random draw from a list of 20, and we'll have a little mini writer's room for each one that we draw. Everyone's had the list ahead of time, so we've had like a little bit of time to prepare. But as you can kind of imagine, it's it's going to be a collaborative effort because coming up with 20 pitches is a bit of a lot of homework, especially for people who have regular lives and jobs and things, right? So it should be a fun
and the
concept.
list was pared down from well over 100. Thank you to everyone who contributed.
Yeah.
We had a wild time paring it down. We kind of everybody sort of picked a handful and we shook it out to 20. But the full list is a sight to behold. Scott, would you please give us the list of 20 we will be drawing from?
The 20 IPs, which have yet to be made into a feature-length motion picture. Number 1, Megaman. Number 2, Scrabble. Number 3, Play-Doh. Number 4, Axe body spray. Number 5, The Cereal Monsters. Count Chocula, Fruit Brute, Frankenberry. Number 6, Alpha Flight. Number 7, Captain Planet. Number 8, Risk. Number 9, Shadowrun. Number 10, Chrono Trigger. Number 11, Among Us. Number 12, Monopoly. Number 13, Fraggle Rock. Number 14, Turok, Dinosaur Hunter. Number 15, Homestar Runner / Trogdor. Number 16, Alf. Number 17, Dino Riders. Number 18, Bioshock. Number 19, Uno. And number 20, Sailor Moon.
And this list really creates quite a wide swath of options. It's a very diverse list that I'm excited to dig into. What say we roll to see which property we're each going to get, and we'll just go around table, do it writer's room style. Greg, you ready to kick us off?
Yeah, Greg drew the short straw, and he gets to start.
I'm absolutely terrified of getting Shadowrun or Uno. So no Uno, please.
Well, you picked it. Anyway, okay. Here we go. Roll for it. 10.
That is Chrono Trigger. this is the one of the ones that I know Chrono Trigger very well.
Nice,
I've played through it a couple times. I did have to search the Wikipedia to remind myself of all the plot beats, and oh boy, there are a lot of them.
Yeah, because there's a lot of time traveling in that film.
Yeah, like I think Chrono Trigger works for me maybe as almost like a Lord of the Rings style epic trilogy, because because it seems to me that it's so dense. There's a great betrayal moment in Chrono Trigger with Magus, or is it a betrayal? It's not really a betrayal, is it?
There's a good reveal with him, yeah.
Yeah, there's a great reveal with him, and a wonderful choice for the player. I remember my buddy and I were playing Chrono Trigger at the same time. This is early when it first came out, and he had gone ahead and just fought Magus and killed him, right? And and he was telling me about it, and I was like, oh yeah, like I just turned him into my friend, and now he's in my party. And he's like, what? And I was like, yeah, and the spells are really cool. You should have kept him.
Should we go around and give a quick, how familiar is each of us with this property for each of the ones that we roll? Because I feel like there will be varying degrees.
Yeah. I'm very familiar with Chrono Trigger. It's one of the best Square Enix games ever made. I've played it not quite once a year ever since it's come out, but I've played it a great deal over and over again. I've probably seen every ending in the game, and it has multiple endings. And it's rad. It's rad. I'm very familiar with it.
Damn. I watched a 6-minute explainer video this afternoon.
I did not play it when it was current, and then have not had an opportunity to play it since. But I have a former roommate who has made a running joke of the fact that it's insane that I haven't played Chrono Trigger because it might be my favorite video game of all time if I would only goddamn play it. Because I'm a big time travel nerd, and apparently there's a lot of time travel, and I like
time travel
Square Enix RPG style. Everything about it objectively should be a game that I love, and I somehow missed it, and then now it's not easily available to play anywhere that I play video games. And I haven't put in the legwork to just pirate it, which is probably what I should do. So I also watched a 6-minute explainer video, and the main takeaway was that 6 minutes is not long enough to explain the dense lore of that video game. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, the art style was even done by the person who does Dragon Ball Z, so it's very stylistic. It looks good. It's a great game.
Yeah, and the battle mechanics are some of the best turn-based mechanics, I think, for my money. It's very fun. The way that, depending on who is in your party, different characters can combine for different spells and things like that. And you can, or your entire party can combine for one super spell. It really, especially towards the end of the game when you can choose your party a lot more, it really gives you a lot of fun options and different gameplay experiences. So yeah, it is a killer game, and if you're into turn-based RPGs, yeah, it would be totally your jam.
I will have to check it out. Nintendo, give me an opportunity to do so. Please put it on your goddamn eShop. Put it on Nintendo Switch Online. I'm ready.
Well, now we've recommended it.
Well, I guess the first thing to suss out with Chrono Trigger is the protagonist is silent. So do we give Chrono himself a voice? Would be my first question. Or do we would we actually want to continue the tradition of the game and just have him just not say a word through the entire movie?
I mean, you could make him mute and just that's a thing, and people just work around it. I think the implied thing in the game is because Chrono's your avatar in the game. You're playing as Chrono. The characters do respond to him and have conversations with him. And so my takeaway was always that it was just the game's shorthand of saying, they're talking to you, you would respond to them. And they didn't want to put words in your mouth per se, but you could lean into it and just make him mute.
Yeah.
Are you picturing this as a live action outing or an animated thing?
I think in my mind's eye it would be live action personally, just because that's what I would want to see if I were to see a Chrono Trigger movie. Although animated would be really fun, but it just doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't. Sometimes animated things, especially like I don't know, fantasy stuff, doesn't feel as epic if they attempt to make it in animated as opposed to live action. Do you know what I mean? Like it just feels like it's such a there's so many sets and other things that they've got to build that it just seems like a Herculean effort to try and like make a Chrono Trigger adaptation, especially considering that this doesn't take place on Earth. Obviously, it's an alternate world, and you're going to have to not only come up with all this great production design for the world as is, but all these different time periods as well. And having to like build this dense history that the game has built, and having to like make sure that the audience understands and can immediately recognize that you're in the past of the Chrono world when you're in the past of the Chrono world and stuff like that. Like it would be a really epic challenge, I think, to adapt.
I think set pieces is the key there, because the impression I got watching the little video was that like each time they iterate on the timeline, it's almost like a whole new fantasy world that they've created. Mm-hmm. Like each world could be its own rich video game environment. And you're going through like 7 or 8 of them over the course of this game. Picking 2 or 3 really strong ones, and then also therefore 2 or 3 timeline iterations, seems like the tightest way to do it in one movie. But if you spread it out over, like you said, Lord of the Rings, but maybe it's like a Dune Part 1, Dune Part 2 thing.
Yeah, mm-hmm. I think
Spider-Man, Spider-Verse.
You could do that. I think you definitely, if you are going to break it up into a series, you want to do the Lord of the Rings or the Dune thing where you just film it all at once.
Yeah.
And then just break it up and release it in parts, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like your first film could be them using the time portal. What's her name? Marla goes back into the past. They go back to save her. They meet Frog. They solve the grandfather paradox with the queen and Marlena, who's the princess, and then they get back to the past, and like then Chrono gets arrested, and that I guess that could be your first movie. Although like it would probably have to end. Maybe it would have to end in the future.
Yeah, I think you're
because that's where Lavos gets introduced, right?
Yeah, you almost want the first movie to do it. Yeah,
Back to the Future. That almost, it's like they go to the past, they go to the future, they go to a weird different past. 3 movie, like
Yeah.
I think you have to have the first movie end with them discovering the ruined future, and figuring out what's going on, and then determining that they have to use the fact that they are time travelers to try to fix the future. And so you'll get Robo in the first movie, you'll get Lavos in the first movie, and then
at least the introduction of like you get to see the eye of Sauron kind of thing in the first movie, right?
Yeah, and then
where you have an understanding of like, because it is kind of a reveal in the game that like there's this bigger problem outside of them just like having time travel adventures. You know, suddenly it goes from having like this sort of like fun Back to the Future thing to then like, oh no, actually the future is super fucked and we need to try and fix it.
Yeah. Then in the second movie, you'd go because they'd figure out by the end of the first movie they have an objective, because they know in the Middle Ages Magus is going to try to summon Lavos, and they figure that's the inflection point. That's where it happened. That gives them a reason to travel back to the past, to hook back up with Frog, and go fight Magus. Yeah.
A question about Frog.
Yep.
Is it CGI or is it like really good prosthetics?
We're hiring Jim Henson, my guy.
Yeah.
The number of times on my list of potential pitches for things where I was like, wrote full blown Muppets on like multiple of these pitches.
Is that because you recently watched Patrick H. Willems?
No, I don't need Pat to tell me Jim Henson's cool.
And practical effects always hold up better.
Yeah.
I think Robo could be a great practical effect. I think Frog could be a great practical effect. I'm all for it. Get to meet Ayla in the second movie. Get to meet Magus in the second movie. Yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah. I mean, just thinking about the game itself and its plot beats and stuff like that, there just seems like there's so many really cool trailer moments. Like just fighting Magus in in the castle. Time traveling to the recent past. Time traveling to was it 16,000 BC? Meeting a robot and stuff like that. Like
seeing that robot fighting a dinosaur.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Seeing a flying magical kingdom.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yep. There's some rad stuff. Visiting Gasper at the end of time, standing by his light.
Yes. And like the reveal of the ship and stuff like that. And of course, like eventually Chrono dies, right? So you get to have
to
have that moment in your second.
I think that's
outing,
that's
right?
where the second movie ends, is Chrono dies, and then that's your hook going into your third movie, which is getting Chrono back and then taking the fight to Lavos and beating that guy to save the future.
Yeah. Yeah, it has a lot of it's got a kind of like a trilogy sort of like built right into it. I mean, it's not really Lord of the Rings in the sense that there's not going to be sort of any army battles or anything like that, but it'll be more, I guess it'll be more Harry Potter with lots of magic fights.
Liam mentioned something about this game being very dense with alternate timelines and different sort of iterations of the timeline, and how that might need to be like streamlined and pared down to some degree to fit it into one or even three movies. The two of you that are more familiar with the game, does that feel like the case, that there are more iterations on the timeline than you could ever fit even into a trilogy, or do you think you can encapsulate it all?
No, you could probably hit them all, but
it did need to fit on a SNES cartridge.
Yeah. I mean, you might spend a more truncated time in, say, like the prehistoric era than you do in the video game. But
yeah, I think the amount of bouncing back and forth between time might have to be reduced, and you'd have to streamline your plot a little bit. Yeah, a little bit more. You could,
prepping for this, not knowing much about Chrono Trigger, I wanted to come with something to offer should I be the one to roll it. And the main thing I took away from all of the sort of research that I did was like that the big deal for Chrono Trigger was that you have a lot of input into the game. Like, your actions have consequences that shape the story in more meaningful ways than had been seen in video games up until that point. And so my pitch was going to be something to do with like, is there a way to give this an interactive element, or a kind of the Clue movie situation where there are multiple cuts of this movie that show it different, like depending on what screening you go to, you might see a different film subtly.
I have a Bandersnatch thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I have a pitch for this though, and it may sound really dumb, but like, you do that. Mm-hmm. You release your movies in the theater, and then when they get to home video, they're all different. Like the other pathways are just like, when it gets to streaming, it goes down this other path, like, and people are like, what?
That's fun, because I was trying to think of like, could you do it like the Clue movie where they famously like put different cuts into different theaters? And like, I don't know if that would be possible, or if it would have the same novelty in the modern age that it did when Clue did it. I don't know how that would work, but I do love the idea of like, it's one movie in theaters and then it hits streaming and it's like, wait a minute, that's a different, that plot took a left where it took a right. I just
love the idea of a studio having the balls to just do that without telling anybody.
Yeah,
if they could keep a lid on it, and then just like until the day of release, suddenly it's a different movie. Would just like, I think that would blow people's minds.
Well, and Chrono Trigger itself, the game has like 13 different endings, and one of them is beating the game right away. And it would be very funny if one of the cuts of the movie was the first time they encounter Lavos, they beat him. And that's just the end of the movie.
This would never happen, but there's a version that's released into theaters. There's a version that's released onto streaming Netflix. One for Disney Plus, one for Crave.
Yeah, I had the same thought. And what's brilliant about it is this satisfies the like capitalism corporate side of it. As you go like, we're going to do a revolutionary thing where we drop this movie on all streaming services at the same time, same day. but then it turns out it's a different movie on each of them. So it's actually going to drive people to sign up for Crave and Amazon where they wouldn't otherwise. It's like, well, I got to see the version where they beat Lavos right away.
It would be simultaneously amazing and just like the worst late stage capitalism play of all time.
I've got to see the one where they beat Lavos before they save the cave people, and everybody wakes up as a reptite the next day.
You bring back Quibi, and Quibi is the only one that gets the immediate Lavos one. It's like, it's like 10 minutes long.
It's very short.
We're relaunching Quibi. Chrono Trigger.
Last question. Do you have any cast in mind pops into your head? Or like
directors in mind?
Yeah.
Guillermo del Toro. If we want to do like something with lots of cool creature effects and stuff, that would be fun.
Yeah. That's not a bad call, actually.
And as I kept describing Lord of the Rings, and I was like, well, he never got to make his Hobbit, so
that's exactly what I was about to say.
Sorry.
Like, I had Peter Jackson and that crew in my head when you were describing the sort of production design it would take. Is like, you know who accomplished that once before is like the Lord of the Rings crew. So it feels appropriate to give Guillermo his shot that he never got on Lord of the Rings. Yeah.
Yeah.
Casting?
Do you think the Wachowskis could do it? No, Greg made a face in the Zoom call. Okay.
Well, I just feel like they haven't done.
They got a lot of big swings and very few connect.
Well, I'm just thinking like the stuff that they've done that's like fantasy adjacent is kind of like their worst stuff, right? At least I say that, and I haven't seen what's the one with Channing Tatum?
Jupiter Ascending. I haven't seen it either, but it's been on my list for a while.
Super well received, so I don't know. But it also doesn't look great.
Depending on what other properties end up getting randomly rolled on this episode, the Wachowskis are specifically one of my director picks for one of these projects. So
I had a lot of Guillermo on my list, so you beat me to that one.
I had a lot of Muppets.
I've got the Muppets are on almost every single one of my pitches.
Nice. Any final thoughts on Chrono Trigger? Do you want to go back in time and roll a different one? No, I'm just kidding. Okay,
Hi,
moving on. Here's my. Okay, this is gonna roll for me. I got 2.
Scrabble.
Oh,
Scrabble. Okay. It is a heartfelt family competition drama. Any one of those movies where someone is like enters like a league or a tournament, like a chess movie, or even a sports movie. One of those movies where someone's really trying to like climb a competitive ladder. I think it's that for competitive Scrabble. But I want to, instead of having it be like real tight ass and serious, I was reminded of a movie from, I think like 2006. Called Aquila and the Bee. Is anyone familiar with Aquila and the Bee?
Familiar with?
No.
Lawrence Fishburne coaches a young inner city girl to do spelling bees at a national competitive level, and it is wrought with drama. I always think back to when I did see it briefly. There's like a scene where the mom's like, "I don't want her out after school spelling." And so, I think the Scrabble movie, it still seems like a fairly genuine movie. I'm not trying to rip on Aquila and the Bee. It's a nice, Sunday afternoon with your mom kind of feel good movie about a young person overcoming adversity and, succeeding in a niche spectacle sport. So that is the broad strokes, my Scrabble movie, is a fairly like earnest Oscar, maybe even Oscar baity, or like kind of cheesy watching on a plane feel good family movie. I go either way. I'm leaning towards the almost cheesy family movie, or like not family movie, but like, those like agreeable movies, those real unobjectionable kind of like, I actually recently watched, Next Goal Wins, the Taika Waititi soccer one. Same kind of vibe of like, we're gonna get there. We're gonna get to the top and everyone's gonna feel good about themselves. It's less about the sport and more about the connecting. But Scrabble, and you get to have a bunch of fun $5 words. I love a big word, and they flex some Scrabble nerd trivia, like how often that like NU comes up. Like, oh, they did it. They did NU, those bastards, those Russian bastards.
I think if you want to make this like a good, maybe almost sappy, maybe even kind of Oscar Beatty family movie, there needs to be a bit of a family dynamic where it's the kid who's getting into competitive Scrabble.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
the Aquila in the Aquila.
Yeah, and they're maybe their dad. Just in my mind, it's their dad is actually like a jock. Like he is big into sports. He's like the sports dad, and he doesn't understand, but he wants to, and he wants to support his kid. And the movie is kind of about the journey of him bridging the gap and like connecting with his kid over this weird sport that his kid's getting into because he wants to be there to support his kid. And
you know what you're describing right now is a King of the Hill episode. This is a
basically
King of the Hill plot. Is Bobby gets into something weird, and Hank initially is like, I don't know, we should just do football, and then eventually he gets too into it, and he's like, no, rose growing is a legitimate sport. You grow
for sure.
son.
And I think that's exactly what it is. Like by the end of the movie, the dad is into it, and he's 100% supporting his kid, and they've bridged the gap. They've made the connection.
They're dancing with their dogs and growing roses.
Yeah.
Yep.
If not a father-child relationship, a teacher and underprivileged and under attention paid to kid in their classroom.
No.
Yeah.
Well, we're gonna split. We're gonna have both this. We're putting them both in the blender. It's a single dad and his kid, and that's why he's so determined to connect with the kid. And it's the kid's like teacher or like mentor who's like the one who's kind of introducing him to that. So there's a little bit of romance between the dad, the dad and the mentor, and then you get both of that.
They start off as kind of rival, like the dad resents the teacher because it's like, oh man, my kid is finding you as a role model, and I want my kid to see me as like you found a way to connect with my kid where I haven't, and so there's like resentment and jealousy there, but then it simmers into attraction by the end of it.
Yeah, the dad gets really into the sport, or like into doing Scrabble with his kid, and we've got a movie.
Yeah,
I like all of that. When I wrote down my quick pitch for this, I immediately thought of Little Miss Sunshine as a comparable.
Oh my god,
Yep.
yes! Oh my god, yes!
And I was just I was thinking of like having this like ragtag group of family members, jumping in the car and road tripping across the country to get her to like the most prestigious Scrabble tournament kind of thing.
I never want to speak negatively about Little Miss Sunshine because I love that movie so dearly, but that movie is only tangentially about the beauty contest.
Yeah.
It is more about the family road trip. Whereas I think this one does need to be grounded in the competitive aspect because you get the thing we were talking about last week with Belford and sports movies. You even get it with like competitive spelling bee movies. There is inherent drama to competition that just like having the character compete in a contest every couple scenes, the same way that like John Wick has a fight every couple scenes, is just like how you drive the tension and momentum forward. And so, it would the Little Miss Sunshine version of this be better than the Aquila and the Bee version of this? Yes, but we've got Hasbro or whoever makes Scrabble, Parker Brothers. I don't know who makes Scrabble. They're breathing down our ass and they want to sell Scrabble units, so Scrabble has to be front and center. It has to make it look cool. We want to research the competitive, have a resurgence in competitive Scrabble.
It is nice to have an option, though, if we need to, like, ratchet up the tension and drive things forward we want some variety in our scenes. There can be, like, oh, no, we're late for the big Scrabble. We have to get you to your thing, and it's across town, and we're not going to make it. Like, that's a tool in our toolkit to give a variety of different tensions in the movie.
Yeah. I mean, if you could somehow convince Hasbro that you were going to try and make an Oscar-winning movie out of Scrabble, then maybe you could do like I had envisioned like this sort of situation where this rather eccentric kid is like some kind of like Scrabble savant, and it's just like the one thing that they're super good at.
Mhm.
And
Searching for
like,
Bobby Fischer.
their mother, father, or whatever is just like super unsupportive. So like her like irresponsible uncle like and her siblings band together to like get her to the tournament. And they kind of do it without the mother knowing, and then the mother has to like track them down.
So you know
where
what
they
movie
went and stuff like that.
you know what movie you're describing right now, Greg? The Wizard.
Oh,
Yeah. Just throw in a
Is that the
power
one?
glove and you're all the
The
way
Power
there.
Glove one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because that's basically the Wizard. The kid is a video game savant. His brother and like this girl they meet on the
Right,
way
yes,
are trying
yes.
to get him to the video game tournament while his parents are trying to catch up with them. And they all come together at the tournament. That's what
Yes.
you're pitching, basically.
And
Except
then,
the Scrabble
you know,
version.
That makes Hasbro happy because, like the Wizard did, they can use this movie to introduce the new Scrabble game that they're putting out.
yeah.
Scrabble 3.
Scrabble 3.
At some point between now and this movie coming out, Scrabble 2 has already happened to make this line up with the Wizard. But yes.
Two dramatic moments I can see on this one.
Mhm.
Is someone having to look it up in the Scrabble dictionary if it counts.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that like pause for the rules scene, and it's someone thumbing through. And then the other one is there's a really obvious like decent play, but our character is really sweating because if they can figure out a way to make the word slightly longer, they'll get triple word score. And then they like flash back to something we saw earlier in the movie, and they're like gelato, and then they like.
I
I like it. And I like the idea of it being a kid too, or like a young teen,
Sure,
maybe
yeah.
junior high or high school, because then like they can be learning words along the way too. And then you have reason for them to be like, I didn't know what gelato was, but now I'm using it to win the Scrabble.
Yeah.
Oh, and sorry, I didn't say this off the top, but they're all Muppets. That's
Yeah. Clearly, yeah.
sorry, I meant that was implied. It's a Muppet. No, I'm kidding. It's not a Muppet. It's not a Muppet.
I was going to say, for genuine casting, I feel like the way you've described it, like, you know, we can fantasy cast it all day, but like this kind of movie, the main kid needs to be like an undiscovered talent. Like this is our Haley Joel Osment or our Abigail Breslin being like, and introducing this precocious child who's great at Scrabble. So I don't know that you can fantasy cast this well. You could cast the adults, I guess.
There's a movie that's out on Disney Plus right now with a young woman named Nicole Parker who just keeps showing up in things as like precocious young girl. I could see her crushing this movie.
Oh, yeah.
Nico Parker, sorry, not Nicole, Nico Parker. But I think, yeah, an undiscovered talent would be the way to go.
Yeah, I think so.
Who's
Sick.
Jock Dad? Who plays Jock Dad?
My brain immediately went Paul Rudd, but at the same
Yeah,
time, I'm
mine
like,
too.
no.
I much like the Muppets, this guy shows up a lot. There's two actors I like casting in things. Like when we did our Caligari one, I want to. There's a couple actors I really like lately, and I want to see. Sorry to put myself on the spot. We discussed it. He was in Everybody Wants Some. Glenn Powell. Glenn Powell's the dad, because I just want to see that guy in everything. That guy, he's funny and handsome the way Ryan Reynolds is, and he's charming and handsome the way Ryan Gosling is, and he is better than the sum of the parts. I said it last week. I'm gonna try to say it next week. We can literally trade in Ryan Gosling for a new or Ryan Reynolds for a new model. We got a couple years left on Gosling, but we can trade Reynolds in for a new model.
And he actually fits the mold for the Jock Dad really good. I
Jock
think.
Dad, yeah. So that's my pitch for the dad.
This is so much better than what I had prepped for Scrabble, which is basically it's Yu-Gi-Oh! It's a heightened anime world where Scrabble is like a competition sport that has magic powers involved. Maybe you have to go on quests to find magical blank tiles and stuff. Yours is a better pitch.
I don't want to route after school spelling. It just gets me every time. Scott, you're up. Here comes your dice roll. Scott, you got 9.
Shadowrun. Okay. So I guess to start then, who here is all familiar with Shadowrun? I am familiar with Shadowrun.
How familiar? Because that also degrees.
Because I've played it. It's a role playing game. It was made into some video games more recently and back in the SNES era, actually. So people might be familiar with it from its video game versions. But in a nutshell, Shadowrun is a cyberpunk fantasy role playing game, which mixes like high magic wizardry and like Native American shamanism and stuff into like near future cyberpunk mega corporate dystopia. It's bright if bright was good. And so that's basically the challenge here, is to make a movie that is bright but good. And I think the first thing you do is not have it be about the cops.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Shadowrun is about primarily the players in Shadowrun are generally going to be lowlives. You're a bunch of disposable assets who are hired by a mega corporation to do their dirty work. And I think that's the starting point for this film, is the main characters are Shadowrunners, just like the title. They get hired by one of the unscrupulous mega corporations to do some shady black op against another unscrupulous mega corporation. They get double crossed so that in the third act, they get to go on a roaring rampage of revenge. And there's your action movie right there. You get a heist movie in the first half and a rip-roaring action movie in the last half. That's my elevator pitch. Except there's magic. There's magic in orcs.
Yeah, I was going to say, for familiarity, I'm going to bet that I'm next, because I read a whole bunch about it and learned all of the lore and the world building because I ran a Dungeons and Dragons campaign where I wanted to have like multiverse shenanigans going into other non-Dungeons and Dragons worlds. And one of the ones I did was Shadowrun. But I rated it for 5e, which Robyn was in for. Yeah.
I was going to say, I'll bet that I'm next after you, because I didn't do any of that research, but I played the game, so I got all of Liam's distilled knowledge.
I should campaign. I should also apologize. I got carried away. I said my familiarity, and then I just dove right into my pitch.
It's good. You're excited. Greg?
That's okay. Oh, I come last. I am not familiar with it, did not do any research, and do not know anything about it whatsoever, other than the name of it is Shadowrun, and it is a game.
Bright, but
cyberpunks with orcs.
Is a good description, I think. And,
yeah,
it's like the only one that I didn't get to doing research on. It had to come up.
Well, that just makes sense. But yeah, so
Scott knows plenty. So for all of us,
yeah, and I mean that was basically my pitch. You get your little cast of characters. You set it up like a heist movie originally, like a dude who's probably an elf or an orc. Make the main character very distinctly a fantasy guy. Mm-hmm. Maybe he's a wizard too, and he gets hired by the Ares mega corporation or Fushi or depending on the time period you're playing it in, or one of the as technology, one of the various evil corporations. And then he needs to get together a crew of other lowlives and like people he knows and plan a heist. And so your first like half to 2/3 of the movie is like a magical heist movie where they can summon spirits, they can use magic, they can use hacking and like technology all together to try to steal the MacGuffin from the other corporation. And then they immediately get double crossed by the people who hired them and like left for dead. And so the back half of the movie, they get to pull out their big guns and go on a rip-roaring rampage of revenge against the other corporation. Maybe even with help from the original corporation, who's like, I mean, we're willing to wipe the slate clean if you guys help us get the thing back. You get some gunplay, you get some subterfuge, you get a heist. I think you could make a fun movie out of that. And you get, again, orcs and elves and dwarves and magic and stuff. So
one of the things I liked that I'd love to see included in this was the idea that in 2012, orcs and elves emerge. Like they're like very X-Men mutant style. They're just this thing that starts popping up and people don't know what to do with them. They're not ancient races that have been on Earth forever. And I like that sort of second-class citizen.
Yep.
You're a bunch of freaks. We don't know how to feel about you. There's cases to be made on all sides, like very X-Men-y in that regard. And I think that's definitely a factor to make sure you play. There's inherent drama in that.
fantastical racism actually definitely an undercurrent throughout, especially because, again, our characters are all going to be from the bottom rung of society. Like, they're desperate criminals who are willing to take payola from an evil corporation to do a black op for them. So they're already pretty desperate people if they're being hired as deniable assets.
The first chunk you described sounded very like, Steven Soderbergh-y, or maybe even like that bit in the Dungeons and Dragons movie where they're like trying to steal back the thing and there's a bunch of variables and they're like casting the portal on the painting and stuff.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But then the last half feels very John Wick as you describe it.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't know I wanted those two things in the same movie, but I do. And
oh, yeah.
I'm excited to. I mean, I wish I could live in the world where I could be excited to see this movie because it was happening.
Yeah, no, I think you even like squeeze in a dragon, maybe one of the corporations, maybe the corporation they originally steal from is Seder Krupp, because Seder Krupp in universe is a mega corporation whose CEO is a literal dragon who sits on a hoard of gold. And he's the one guy in the universe who you really don't want to mess with. So they could steal from him, and that gives them an impetus to try to steal it back when they get double crossed. And then they have a dragon helping them out, which is kind of cool.
That's pretty dope.
Also famously set in Seattle, and I think leaning in like Seattle's the fifth character, there
are source books for playing in other areas, but for 100%, you set it in Seattle because that's the base setting for the game.
Is there a moment from any game you've played at your table, Scott, that you think you'd love to like sneak into this movie without, making you have to explain a whole bunch of backstory for your guys, but just any moment you've played, you'd sneak in if you were writing this?
100%. They'd all start making their plan at a fictional restaurant chain that we made up for our game called Turkey Hut.
Nice.
Very good.
Or Watanabe's authentic Irish pub. That's the other place that we made up in our Seattle that we would absolutely use. But yeah, no, for sure. That's my pitch. Maybe I was the right person to get Shadowrun because I knew the most about it.
Yeah.
If it's in Seattle, stunt cast for the voice actor for the dragon, Kelsey Grammer.
Sick, yes.
David Hyde Pierce.
Sure.
David Hyde Pierce would be, yeah, there you go. Because then we don't have to deal with Kelsey Grammer.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, then that leaves Robyn. I'm going to roll your pick for the list. You got one.
Megaman.
All right. So full disclosure, have not played a Mega Man game. I've picked up Mega Man through cultural osmosis. He shows up in Smash Brothers. He's, I've been adjacent to Mega Man. I'm on my wall right now. I have a beautiful piece of video game art by local artist Hamburger Hands that has, all the Mario characters and all the Zelda characters and all the Donkey Kongs, and then a bunch of Mega Man guys on it. So I have Mega Man art on my wall in the room I'm currently in, but have not.
Hey, me too.
There you go. So my familiarity is low, but my excitement is high. I did do some research for this one. I think I understand the general plot and workings of how Mega Man goes. Where is everyone else at with Mega Man?
Yeah,
well,
I've never really played a game, but all I know about the games is that you don't have to play them in any kind of linear order. Like, not the games, but within the game. Like, there's 9 levels, 9 boss fights, beat them in whatever order you want.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a preferred way through each game because each of the bosses is weak to another boss's weapon generally, but you can fight them in any order. I have played many Mega Man games. I played most of the NES era ones. I played most of the SNES era ones. Didn't really pick up the later ones all that much, but yeah, they're fun. I'm familiar with the characters. I'm familiar with the lore behind Mega Man and Mega Man X for that matter. Yeah, it's a fun series. If you've not played a Mega Man, they're pretty solid platformers.
There you go.
Yeah.
I might have to look it up.
I despite having Mega Man art on my wall, it's not much of a nostalgic game for me. Like, I've played it enough. Character looks cool. I like the concept of all the different beating bad guys with different weapons and then taking their weapon from them. That's cool. I like the nonlinear style of the game. But yeah, like outside of that, like I never got in beyond the NES versions of the game. I don't think I've played one.
Fun fact, the second ever Nintendo game that I owned was Mega Man 3.
Nice.
That is technically not true if you count Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt as the first one, but it comes with the console. The first one prior to Mega Man 3, Rampage.
Tight.
Which unfortunately has been made into a movie and thus was not eligible for this.
So I'll give my brief understanding of Mega Man, and folks who are more familiar can correct me, but just so we all kind of know what we're working with. Mega Man is the franchise concerns there are two scientists, Dr. Light and Dr. Wily. Dr. Light is a good guy, Dr. Wily's a bad guy. They originally were partners who made robots together, but then they had some sort of a falling out, and now Dr. Wily makes all the robots evil, and Dr. Light tries to combat that by creating Mega Man, who has to go around and fight all Dr. Wily's creations. And,
specifically, their falling out is over the fact that Dr. Wily was saying, hey, we could use these robots to take over the world, and Dr. Light was like, or maybe we could not do that?
Fair. And it sounds like over the course of the many games, there are a lot of schemes and machinations. Dr. Wily tries a bunch of different ways to pull one over on Dr. Light. Sometimes they have to team up against a common enemy. Usually it's revealed that Dr. Wily was behind it all along.
Yep.
The wheel keeps on spinning. And I gather that as Mega Man, you fight robots and then use the powers that you gain from defeating the robots to fight other robots.
And ultimately to fight Dr. Wily, yes.
There you go. So coming at this with very little firsthand experience, the thing that struck me about it was like, it seems like Mega Man himself doesn't have a lot of depth as a character because he is your avatar in the game and thus doesn't have like a lot of personality to him.
Yeah, so Dr. Light has two other robots that Dr. Wily doesn't steal because they're kind of like his kids.
Yes.
And their names are Rock and Roll. And Rock ends up getting turned into Mega Man to fight Dr. Wily's stolen robots. And Roll is kind of just there to help out and support. They also have another robot who's like the prototype robot that was eventually turned into Rock and Roll. He's Proto Man, who's also kind of around and is like the Lancer character. He's the Green Ranger of the group. He's kind of, is he a good guy? Is he a bad guy? Who knows?
He's the Knuckles. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Or the Shadow if you're a Gen Z.
You're nasty.
So the thing that struck me, like, I feel like your Mega Man casting is, the it boy of the day. It's Tom Holland or Timothy Chalamet or whoever's hot right now. I don't think it matters too much because I think the heart of this movie is Dr. Light and Dr. Wily and their relationship. Because reading about this and watching explainer videos, it feels like they are the core of this. They are the dramatic tension. They really reminded me of like a Professor X and Magneto dynamic where they're like old friends who became enemies, but sometimes they have to work together and they ideologically differ. And the thing about the X-Men movies, for all of their highs and lows, I think they nailed Professor X and Magneto twice over. And it's insane that they did it so good twice, that like Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, fantastic chemistry between the two of them. And then to do it again with James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender, it's nuts that they hit that jackpot twice. And I think we need that kind of a dynamic in our Mega Man movie. We need a really strong pairing of actors to play these two scientists who are old friends, but now rivals. And I have, and also, it goes without saying, some subtle but definitely present sexual tension between them, like with Professor X and Magneto. Like,
I mean, Dr. Light doesn't have a wife. Neither of them have wives, and they used to be partners. I'm here for it.
The studio won't let us like actually have them kiss, but like you want to see them kiss. So my pitch may be unconventional, but I don't know which one is which because I don't know the game well enough. But it's Paul Giamatti and Stanley Tucci, baby.
Nice.
Yeah.
I looked up Dr. Wily. Giamatti is Dr. Wily for sure.
Oh, no, I strongly disagree. I think Giamatti with a big beard goes Dr. Light, and you have Stanley Tucci hamming it up with a big mustache as Dr. Wily.
Yeah.
So the thing is, they both make great villains, so I don't know who to give it to, but
yeah. Well, I just saw Giamatti in The Holdovers recently, and he was like, just like, you want to hug the guy. Like he's curmudgeonly, but very huggable in that movie. So, if I can pitch a director,
Yeah, absolutely.
or directors, I think this is where you sprinkle in some of that Speed Racer magic, and you bring in the Wachowskis to like heighten the reality. So it's live action, but it's got like that anime heightened reality. It's got the big saturated colors. It's got like the bold action. I think that would be a great directing duo for this.
This does feel like the kind of movie that needs to live in that sort of high art style. Like the world needs to be very artistically realized in a way that maybe justifies like a Speed Racer or a Sin City, where it's just like we're going all the way to 11 with the CGI to the point
Zack
that it
Snyder?
is an artistic choice. Yeah.
That could be fun, but it also, as what I kind of thought of when I was thinking of my pitch for Mega Man was Big Hero 6.
Oh yeah.
Like,
that works too.
Like having it be like an animated family film. I actually have some plot beats for this one, if you don't mind, if I can.
Absolutely.
Sure.
I was thinking that like, I guess Rock, could be like this, he's like kind of like a robot teenager, sort of like, the kid in Big Hero 6. He's like a bit of a daredevil, and he spends his, spare time just like parkouring across a city. That way you can get some of that, platforming stuff.
Hoverboarding on his dog.
Yeah, exactly. All that weird stuff. And he's perpetually like kind of avoiding Dr. Light's like wishes, who wants him to help him in the lab. And, he's just wants to kind of like go his own way, so that, we can have that kind of moment where Dr. Wily betrays Dr. Light. Maybe he dies, maybe he doesn't. I don't know what you'd want to do there.
Injured, maybe, but not dead.
But then, Mega Man has to use all the technology and knowledge that Dr. Light has imparted to him to build his Mega Man suit, and then go and save the day.
I don't think you want to kill off Dr. Light in the first movie, especially because if this is successful, you got a franchise, baby. There's dozens and dozens of robot masters that you can pull from.
Yeah.
And if you've got dynamite chemistry between your Dr. Light and your Dr. Wily, you don't want to squander that in the first movie.
No. And given that I pitched it as a family film, like generally you don't kill off a whole lot of people in those. So
Maybe the thing the most recent Batman did, where like they kill Alfred, but then like Alfred is in a bomb blast, but then he's fine and he's just like in a hospital bed for the rest of the movie. And he can come back for the next one. Yeah.
Not to do the like, well, here's what I would have done, but we brought it up earlier, and I'm like, I really hope we get Mega Man so I can tie this in. We were talking about the weird release thing with the Chrono Trigger movie, and playing around with what streaming service can do. Because all I know about Mega Man is that you can play any villain in any order. I imagined a direct-to-streaming movie where the first maybe quarter of it is a movie, and then they sort of set up kind of like Shin Kamen Rider, the movie we did a couple weeks ago or months ago on the podcast. There's just a list of guys he's got to go kick the shit out of before he can get to Dr. Wily. And it's just like 3 or 4 scenes of him fighting robots in their world, doing their bit. And then it all culminates in a big fight with Dr. Wily. Basically the middle half of the movie, you can watch those scenes in any order.
That's
and
fun.
then at the end, there's still, the big fight with Dr. Wily. It's not like full choose your own adventure, and it's not a full series. It's just that the middle of the movie, because it's just 3 or 4 instances of him going to kick the shit out of a robot, they don't have to happen in any kind of order.
And then like maybe even the streaming service like randomizes it for you, that like just you click play and you get an order, but it's determined by an algorithm every time, and it's different every time.
But yes, that can be one of the options, but I always think of the grid where it's like, you go to the left, you want to fight Cutman, you go to the right, you want to fight Rockman, and you get the little Netflix menu where you're like picking the next scene. Yeah.
That's very fun. Does anyone have any, I pitched my casting early because that was the only thing I had for this, but are there any iconic Mega Man villains that we would then have casting for?
Well, I think if you're doing your first Mega Man movie, you just stick with the original 8 Robot Masters from the first Mega Man. And those are the robots that Dr. Wily steals from Dr. Light in the first movie. So you get your Cut Man, your Guts Man, your Elect Man, your Fireman, your Bomb Man. I'm impressed that I remembered that many. Iceman, Iceman's from the first one. Yeah, and you stick with that like core original group, because then if you got a smash hit on your success, you get to line up your sequels. You go into Mega Man 2's villains, you go into Mega Man 3's villains.
Yeah.
And you just, you work your way through. You don't have to stick to like the loose plot of the game, of each of the games, but you can like stick with the iconic robot masters from those games, I think.
It does feel like an opportunity to pull Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem and just have far too stacked voice cast, especially if you're doing it animated like Greg suggested. But even for a live action, like, there are so many small villain roles that you can give to fun character actors and be like, yep, the trailer can have that beautiful moment where it just like drops all the names of the people. Like, whoa, there are so many good, funny people in this. Or yeah.
Great. I could put Tim Robinson as Cutman.
There you go.
You think these saw blades aren't sharp? Okay. That's nothing. Right on. Well, those are 4 great pitches for 4 great movies, I think, if anyone in Hollywood is listening, and I know you are. By all means, they're free. Take them. They're yours. We put them out in the world because we like movies and we like art, and have them. We're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're going to do a couple real rapid-fire ones without rolling, just ones we were excited to talk about. We'll be right back.
I'd like to get more reading done, and joining a book club seems like a good idea, but I don't know.
Why not?
Reading a whole book in a month, that's pretty daunting.
What if it was just a chapter, say a week?
That doesn't sound too bad. Still, getting together with a bunch of people, that's a whole evening.
Well, what if it was only half an hour, whenever you wanted to?
That would be great.
The Read Along, a mini book club for your ears.
Join my wife, Anita,
and my husband, Scott,
as we take you on a journey through a good book,
one chapter at a time. Available right now on your podcatcher of choice.
Welcome back to I Have Some Notes. We are pitching IPs from the intellectual property lottery. We've drawn or rolled, as the case may be, from our list of 20, but each one of us had some ideas that sparked joy. So to close out the episode rapid fire style, we're each going to pick one from the list non-randomly and discuss our thoughts. And since Uno is on the list, I'm going to play the Uno reverse card and say we'll do reverse order. Robyn, you're up first.
Yeah, I have one that initially I was like, I'm not super familiar with this. I don't really have anything in mind. And then I started researching it a little more deeply and was like, oh, actually, I have an idea that I'm really excited about, which is Alpha Flight. If you're not familiar, Alpha Flight, they're a Canadian superhero team from the Marvel Comics lore, usually show up in X-Men books, loosely affiliated with Wolverine, in that Wolverine is a sometimes member, sometimes deserter, sometimes enemy of Alpha Flight. Alpha Flight is a superhero team put together by the Canadian government of superpowered individuals in Canada. And their connection with Wolverine is, Wolverine also created by the Canadian government. Sometimes Alpha Flight gets teamed up with him, and sometimes Alpha Flight gets pitted against him or sent to go retrieve him, that sort of thing. Their members are long and varied. We probably don't have time, so I'm not going to go into it. But
there's a few iconic members, but yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
they've had
the
a long
Vindicator
roster.
and Puck, who is a very small man who bounces around acrobatically.
Sasquatch. There's an actual Sasquatch
There's
on
a
the
Sasquatch. Great stuff. My elevator pitch for this is you cash in on that Wolverine connection that, that is the character that everyone knows and is excited about. But it's the first movie featuring Wolverine where it is in no way from his perspective. Wolverine is the antagonist of this movie. We're fully in Alpha Flight's perspective. It's this, group of superpowered individuals brought together by the Canadian government. They're like, listen, we have a military asset that has gone rogue and escaped out into the world. And he's, this creature is very dangerous and he's property of the Canadian government. And we need brave individuals to go retrieve this monster that we have created and unleashed upon the world. And they're like, yeah, we'll do our part for our country and for our fellow people. And then you get basically a Predator movie, but the Predator is Wolverine. and they're trying
Sweet.
to hunt him through the Canadian wilds. But he's always one step ahead of them. And depending on when this comes out, maybe it's Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, or maybe it's whatever they do in the MCU later on, which is probably just be lazy and keep using Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. From the looks of Deadpool and whatnot, it looks like they're just not going to try. But it is continuity neutral. It can plug in wherever. Whoever's Wolverine currently, that's the villain of this movie. I just want to see a movie where Wolverine is the monster. That sounds fun as hell to me.
Yeah, a good way to breathe new life into cinematic Wolverine.
Yeah.
And a good way to get you to, like, be excited about a new superhero team that you hadn't heard about and don't care about. Of, like, anyone who's going up against Wolverine, you're going to naturally be like, I'm kind of pulling for these guys. Like, they got their work cut out for them.
Yeah, my pitch for Alpha Flight was definitely a little more action comedy and was more like spinning off of the Deadpool movies, and definitely also had Wolverine in it. So
there you go.
I'm glad that we both were like, well, obviously you connected to Wolverine because he's the most popular guy.
Yeah.
Dig it. Scott, which one enthused you?
This is going to sound weird. Axe body spray.
I had a pitch for Axe body spray. I'm excited to see if you came up with the same idea.
I don't know, because on the surface, I think you're thinking you're going to do like a bro movie, like some sort of weird dude bro movie. I disagree. My Axe body spray movie is a horror comedy. Because the commercials that are the iconic Axe body spray commercials are dudes spray themselves and women can't help but be attracted to them. So I picture a scientist working for the Axe Corporation accidentally doses himself with a super concentrated experimental Axe body spray that is super effective. And now he's on the run trying to find a way to reverse the chemical reaction while he is being pursued relentlessly by women who are trying to like get with him, but like violently so. Like he is in mortal danger. It's a weird zombie-esque movie. And I think it starts out being kind of bawdy and funny and gets progressively more terrifying as the movie goes. I was thinking you tap Edgar Wright to be the director because he's got that Shaun of the Dead cachet. And I think that's the kind of humor that would work really well with it. And that's my Axe body spray pitch is you make a weird zombie-esque horror comedy.
It's, you know what? Cause like Axe is such a toxic like brand as well. That kind of, and my pitch was like, just make fun of toxic masculinity in a broy comedy, like an ironic one. But I like this better because it plays on the horror of it's a real careful what you wish for situation. Cause like as a dude, like you kind of like, even though we all objectively understand that the marketing message of Axe body spray is sexist and toxic and shitty, there's like, as an idiot lizard brain dude, there is always a party that's like, yeah, but like if every woman just wanted to fuck me, that would be pretty great. And then it's like, be careful what you wish for. Like this is, you don't want this. You don't. Yeah, it would be hell.
Well, and
death by snoo. Like
I think it definitely starts out like kind of like a body raunchy comedy, and it progressively gets more harrowing and more terrifying and more like and more violent to him, and like to the point where he's legitimately like terrified and like boarding up doors and windows and desperately trying to find a way to reverse what's happened to him.
What's wild is I also landed on zombie movie for Axe body spray, for the same reasons. But it's like they could be in the same continuity. Mine would be later on in the same. It was basically a post-apocalyptic 28 days later scenario where like Axe body spray drove a bunch of women feral to the point that the male population has been wiped out, and you now have feral zombie women roaming the streets and the few survivors who are left, and maybe you have a sort of Children of Men scenario where they find an awkward young teenage boy who might be the last man on Earth, and they have to try and get him to the Axe factory to go find a cure. So it could be a sequel later in the continuity of the same universe.
Mine's the patient zero, and yours is the post-apocalyptic result.
The main thing I was struggling with was like, how do you not make it, give in to sexism and misogyny, even if you're trying to subvert it? And I was like, oh, you just make the whole cast women. They're all women all the way down. Maybe one awkward teenage boy.
I think I went like in the completely opposite direction of you guys because like I kind of looked at it as like two wannabe bros who constantly strike out at the bar. They endeavor to like find the perfect deodorant formula that will solve their flop sweating problem.
Like weird science.
Yeah. And then they stumble upon a formula that every man loves. They think it's the greatest thing ever, and they become super rich. But women universally hate it, and they fail to recognize yeah.
That's
kind
fun.
of where I went with that.
So I want to talk about Fraggle Rock because this one I think just writes itself. They also rebooted Fraggle Rock on HBO recently, and I watched a little bit of it. I have fond memories of Fraggle Rock as a kid. Full blown Muppets. I love the Muppets in anything. And so, but a Fraggle Rock movie, I think, writes itself because every episode of Fraggle Rock, including the old ones, the new ones, it all takes place in the titular Fraggle Rock. They are always in the same set. They rarely journey out beyond. Except for one Fraggle, Uncle Traveling Matt, who is the globe-trotting uncle of Webley. I think that's the main one. And also,
Gobo?
Gobo. Sorry, thank you. Fun fact, the reason that character is named Uncle Traveling Matt is he's in front of a blue screen. Before there was even green screen, it was blue screen. And those, I guess, the mat, the big blue mat that you would do green screen, blue screen stuff in front of was called a traveling mat. And so that's where they gave him the name. And it's the guy who's in front, because if you've seen the old show, it's always Uncle Traveling Matt in front of a green screen footage of New York, Shanghai, whatever. So the premise of the movie is, Gobo hasn't gotten a letter from his Uncle Traveling Matt in quite a long time, and he's worried something's happened to them. So they need to brave, the journey beyond, Fraggle Rock, and go try to find, reverse engineer from the letters he sent where in the world Uncle Traveling Matt might be. And along the way, they meet different, like, you know, I don't know what you call a group of Fraggles, a hive, but like a hive of Fraggles, Doozers, Gorgs, and silly creatures, where like the dynamic's a little bit different. Like maybe the Doozers make their little sticks out of a different root vegetable. Maybe the Gorgs are friendly and they have a much more symbiotic relationship with the Fraggles. They meet fucking cursed, punished, evil Fraggles. But there's all these little clutches of Fraggles across the world. And then eventually they find Uncle Traveling Matt and bring him home.
Yeah,
So.
I'm pleased that you and I had similar conceptions for the Fraggle Rock movie. I will say that my conception had the Fraggles venturing out of the rock and being pursued by one of the Gorgs. So you have the Fraggles looking for, in your case, Uncle Traveling Matt, which definitely works better than what I had. And you have one of the Gorgs also interacting with the real world while going after them.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
put that in for sure. It does. I mean, you can't think about it too hard, but I've always never understood how far away is the repair shop guy from wherever the Gorgs grow their radishes. Because I'm like, does the silly creature, the old man and his dog, not realize that like where the wild things are, giants live 2 doors down? The geography of Fraggle Rock never sat right with me. So if we can abandon it and go across the world, then I'm also satisfied. Greg, what do you got?
Okay, so I wanted to give my it's not really a pitch for Captain Planet so much as it is solving a major problem, because
Climate change.
Yes,
Finally, somebody's
finally
doing it.
Someone's thinking about it.
Adam McKay standing there like, oh my God, I need some people backing me up on this one.
Because I think the thing about Captain Planet is like that design is very silly and stupid. He looks very dumb. So I thought like, because as I recall in the show, it's like Gaia that is distributing the powers to all the kids, right? So this is sort of like a Power Rangers type movie.
Yep.
But if the kids are like kind of like hilariously immature, or they're sort of like a Breakfast Club bunch, right? When Gaia sends them their champion, which is like this, he's like a god, and he looks like a typical god in any like what's those stupid movies with Sam Worthington, like
Clash
he
of
looks
the
like
Titans.
those. Yeah. He looks like those type of gods, right? And they either because they're just pranking this guy or whatever, just like taking the piss out of everything. They basically like dress him up in their own superhero suit. And like, and call him Captain Planet as a joke, just to sort of like.
So it's basically they Psycho Gorman the guy.
Yeah. And that's how you get this sort of like you maintain the goofy look of Captain Planet while simultaneously acknowledging how stupid the whole thing is.
I think Captain Planet fans are going to love that your approach starts with, well, the first thing we got to address is that he looks like a fucking idiot, and we have to explain why anyone would ever look like that.
He does. He's got a silver face. He's got green spiky mullet. He's got like a bad graphics globe on his front, and like I don't know what's there, like red on top, white on. I don't know. It just looks bad. It doesn't look cool at all.
He was supposed to look 90s cool, and I think you could definitely update Captain Planet's look for a modern movie. I don't think anybody's
I
going
like
to be
this
upset
pitch
with that.
though. Just like
I want to maintain that look. It's still as dumb as it looks. It's still iconic, right?
Yeah.
My pitch for Captain Planet was just repurposing my pitch for Animorphs on a previous I Have Some Notes episode, which is you just have them as adults and they've never stopped being the Planeteers because the world is still on fire, but now it's just like they're middle-aged and it's like their job, and they're like, I don't know, Hog Greedley or whatever is pumping sludge into the ocean, so I have to go clock in and fight him. Like it's
they've kind of mostly given up. Yeah.
Ooh, yeah.
They have to be taught or have to be shown that they're important.
Yeah.
Dead serious then. This is if that's the angle you want to go in, they're all exhausted in a way that represents our own collective exhaustion by the fact that probably nothing's going to get done about climate change and everyone's to blame. Like definitely rich people, but probably also us too. Like everyone's to blame. Then you need a new Captain Planet villain that isn't just like some idiot, pouring sludge all over the ducks for no reason. And it's I don't know what his punchy name is, but he's an accelerationist. He's truly the guy who's like, we're going to crank this up to 11 so we can build a new world order on the ashes of the toxic wasteland. And
he's going to bring about the day after tomorrow.
Yeah. So
he's going to cause the Axe body spray apocalypse.
Yeah. they have to get over their own climate apathy to handle accelerationist man.
I want to build on this. The Planeteers, now that they're older, they're jaded, they can't summon Captain Planet anymore, and part of the reason is because they don't work together well anymore, because they all have they're all at different levels of apathy or like futility. They're still trying, but they don't get along anymore. So the movie's also the journey of them getting back together, and the climax is them being able to summon Captain Planet again. To fight
Take that one step further, then, if they're all at different stages of apathy, sounds like stages of grief. Let's see if I can pull them off the top here. The Power Fire one is the anger.
Yeah, for sure.
The Power of Water one from Russia, maybe, or from Asia, is bargaining. It's like making deals with the Koch brothers. Power of the Heart is the one that's maybe denial,
right?
Acceptance. Yeah, I think acceptance. Yeah.
Well,
I
think
yeah.
And because Heart was always the joke power, he's definitely the one who manages to reach out and get everybody back together.
Right.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Earth can be depression then, and
Wind is denial.
Yeah, wind is denial. I might realize my notes cut off the other one. Yeah. There you go.
I like it. Like they're all still working for Gaia. They're all still trying, but like they're older, they're jaded, they're faced with the futility of it. And then faced with this new, really apocalyptic villain, they have to like the heart kid gets them, the heart adult now gets the gang back together. They start working together again. They start realizing that they still can work together. They dig down deep and they summon Captain Planet again to go punch a dude. Yeah, I love it.
Sick.
Captain Planet's reveal is the big like third act reveal. He can still look goofy.
They're like, they all summon him for the first time in a while. Like, wow, that seemed a lot cooler when we were kids in the 90s.
Who do you cast as a live action Captain Planet now that David Bowie is gone? Because I feel like
John,
been a good choice.
John Cena.
There you go.
I do like that. Yeah.
You guys have seen the mock-up trailer, right? The live action mock-up trailer that's on like College Humor.
Like Don
the one
Cheadle.
with Don
thing?
Cheadle.
Don Cheadle, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a lot of fun, guys. Thank you very much to all of the listeners who contributed your ideas on the Discord, on our social media. Maybe we'll post the master list somewhere, not just our 20, but the what we didn't take. Perhaps. I don't know. Won't make any promises. And if you did enjoy this episode, let us know, because maybe this is something we do maybe once a season, because it certainly was a lot of fun. Thank you very much, Robyn, for joining us. Your musical comedy band, Success 5000, has a new album that just released this past week. Can you tell us a little about that and where we can find it?
Yeah, the album is called Sad Forever. It is by Success 5000, and you can find it on any streaming service, Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, wherever you listen to your music, or you can find it on Bandcamp if you want to directly support an artist, because they're better about that. But yeah, it's a very fun album full of relatable musical comedy about what it's like to live in the world now, as the title probably gives you some indication.
Yeah.
Yeah, Captain Planet's not coming for us anytime soon.
Nah.
And of course, you can also find Robyn and myself on the podcast Quantum Kickflip. Search that wherever it is you're listening to podcasts. It's a Slug Blaster actual play. What's Slug Blaster? It's a tabletop role-playing game that a local artist designed, Mikey Ham, that's been popping off, winning all sorts of awards. And we are the only actual play doing that I'm aware of. So season 2 is wrapping up.
Season 2 is just about to end. So now's a great time to get caught up, and you can join us for the finale of the second season.
Woo.
And of course, please follow us on social media at I Have Some Notes on X, at I Have Some Notes Pod on Instagram. Find us on Facebook, or best thing you can do, head to ihavesomenotes.com. Find the link to our Discord channel and come get in on the good times we're having in our free to everyone Discord. You don't have to be a Patreon member. We just want to talk to you in a place that isn't run by Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, you can also, of course, give us some monetary reimbursement if you like what we do and want to support us. You can do that right now over at patreon.com/IHaveSomeNotes. There are a few perks. We do put out some extra stuff for our patrons from time to time, and some early episodes here and there, so definitely check that out.
And I'm really excited for our next episode because at long last we'll be rounding out the TNG, the Star Trek Next Generation movies, and doing Star Trek Nemesis.
I'm excited. The first Star Trek movie of my tenure in this position as co-host of the show, and I'm a Doctor Who guy. I don't know much about Star Trek, so I'm excited to jump into that one. Until then, I'm Liam Kreswick.
I'm Scott C. Bourgeois.
I'm Greg Beaver. Keep watching the skies.
For the record, I just want to say, even though I'm not intending to pitch this one, Terry Gilliam doing basically Peasant's Quest for Trogdor.
Oh, that's fun.
Was going to be my pitch. Basically, Terry Gilliam doing this surreal Python-esque story of a peasant who gets tapped to try to stop Trogdor from burninating the countryside. That was my Homestar Runner one.
Very, very fun.
But that's not the one I want to do.
I had Homestar Runner as like the cast of Homestar Runner is in like a 1940s noir thriller with no explanation.
That's very good.
And it just at the end you just get like a cut to Strong Bad answering his email saying that would be how he would do his noir thriller kind of thing. Yeah.
My Homestar Runner one was just a fawning documentary about the brothers Chaps. And it's just like,
oh yeah,
it's the Homestar Runner documentary, the making of, just really fawning and toothless and joyful.